Hey everybody, welcome back to Bleeding Cool's weekly recap of Freeform Siren. This guy right here with all the hair and the hipster hat. My name is Ray Fluck, I'm television beat writer for Bleeding Cool. And let me just start off as we are going to segue into our review of the third episode of this season, Interview with a Mermaid. Side note, I keep wanting to call it Interview with the Vampire. I think you can pretty much know why. So if I do that, call me out. We'll make it some kind of no prize or something like that, but I'm going to try and practice Interview with a Mermaid. Interview with a Mermaid. I even now almost said vampire. But back on track. I'm technically, in my mind, viewing this as the second episode. For those of you who saw our review of the first two episodes, you know in my mind it was kind of my fault. I saw the pilot and the lore more as a 2-hour first episode and kind of see this as the second. So I went into it a little cautious because most of us know the second episode of a lot of series can suffer the sophomore slump. So I went into it kind of like, okay, I'm going to cut it some slack. No, I have to say, I found Interview with a Mermaid to be, you saw I slowed down there to make sure I got it right. But I found it to be a really enjoyable episode that started moving a lot of the plot points forward in smart ways. There are a couple cliches that cropped up that I think you kind of have to expect in a series like this. So it's not a matter of that I don't like them. I hope they're handled interestingly enough. And we do the review running recap in a minute. I'll tell you what those were. But overall, again, 3 episodes in, very, very strong so far. Again, does it keep me wanting to know where this is going? Oh, absolutely. Especially by the end of it. So just so you know, if you see my eyes glare over here for a second, it's because I'm using my cheat sheet notes just to make sure that I got everything up to speed for you guys. I just want to forget everything because this brain sometimes can get a lot of different shows going at the same time. So I don't want to suddenly cross over mentally with The Walking Dead and American Horror Story because that could get kind of weird. So hey, let's get started. Episode starts off, we see, and no surprise, Ben's having some issues and some effects from the Mermaid's Siren, the Mermaid song from Rin. That's not shocking. It's not surprising. You know what my feeling is, though, in regards to the whole Ben-Rin thing. I know they're probably most likely 99.9% leading towards that, but I really like Ben and Maddie, and I like Rin and Maddie, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, too, what that's about. But we essentially have that in play as Ben and Maddie are having a conversation about Rin and what's been going up to this point. I thought it was a nice little... I liked it because it was kind of like, hey, just to catch you up to speed before we get going without being so obvious about it. So I was a big fan of that. We have Sheriff Dale, who happens to be Maddie's dad. He's on the trail behind the scenes trying to piece together all of the things, essentially the path of interesting destruction that Rin has left. From the body in the windshield to finding the blood on the clothesline to talking with Vicky and getting a description on who it was that took the clothes. Again, we see the beginning of the side storyline starting to converge. Not the only side storyline that will start to converge, as we see by the end of the episode. So at that point, we then segue into what I'm going to formally call our moment. I actually did that pretty well, I think. It actually wasn't so bad. Because we have Decker, our resident guy who is our scientist who's going to do experimentation for the good of mankind, of course. And he's been doing this human mermaid DNA hybrid thing. And it was very, very interesting because I called it a wahaha moment because at the exact moment we see this, we then cut to Xander and Calvin, who get a SOS text from Chris from the phone identified owner as Donna. Mwahaha, dun 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 moment. We actually have a couple more dun dun moments at the end of the episode too, but wow. 2 major developments. I like the way they juxtapose them together to give a connection. We'll see a little bit more of that later on, which is, again, one of the things I really like about the series. We now have Helen stepping into her mandatory Giles role to say wise and very, very important things. She makes sure Ben realizes, look, Ben, you want to start getting some answers. We understand you're a scientist, but you have to start embracing, appreciating, and respecting your past. You can't run from it. You can't deny it. You can't just write it off as folklore or fantasies or the ramblings of somebody who may be, quote unquote, mentally ill. So again, not a major role. I like Helen's more kind of like, I need all these players to get where I need them to be, and I'm going to watch out for Rin as much as I possibly can without exposing myself. So again, Helen's keeping that well, for lack of a phrase, we're going to say she's keeping her pimp hand strong in the background and making sure that everybody's kind of like doing what they need to do. She's the elder stateswoman of the town, so of course she sees where everything's going. So I was a really big fan of that. We then have well, essentially the reason why the episode is titled Interview with a Mermaid. Got it again. Ben, Maddie, and Rin get together. They start interviewing Rin about essentially what they need to know about mermaids. And a couple things they realize. First, the transformation that they go through is incredibly and disgustingly painful. Another thing they learn is that mermaids, when in water, it's pure survival instinct. Survive, kill or be killed, eat, support, back your own. It's that basic and structurally simple. The other thing is that, and for lack of a better phrase, there are oodles of mermaids out there. As I subtly try to flip the page of my notes, and you know what? Here are my notes. Love you guys. I'm not going to try to hide anything from you. You should know when things are going on. So, and again, oodles of mermaids. The reason why I bring this up, because in my mind, I've just had this vision. I don't know if it's going to be season finale or something like that. I just imagine a whole hell of a lot of CGI mermaids popping up out of the water to make Bristol Cove understand, like, look, you are painfully outnumbered. Like, this story between your town and us goes a lot further than what you may think. So, again, I just think that'd be, I don't care if it sounds cheesy or not. It would be one of those season finale cliffhangers where I'd be like, oh, wow. Okay, how many more months until the show returns? But I digress. Let's continue on. She's also given a primate intelligence test, the PIT. I want to make sure I got that right, which she just blows through with flying colors. And again, I think that touches upon something that I like about this series. This idea, again, of just because they're mermaids, just because they're not human, doesn't mean that they're babies and they're lost innocence or things like that. They're just not used to being on land and used to us. That doesn't mean they're not brilliant. That doesn't mean they're not 1,000 times evolved from where we were. They just function on a different level. And I like the show has really been laying that groundwork. Like, look, this isn't something that's just primal and just turns on us. This is something that's been around for a long, long time. Mermaids have been around for a very, very long time. And it's the idea of like, no, actually, humans, you need to kind of adjust to us as much as you may think we need to adjust to you. So again, I like that build because you know there's that gut feeling I have between the eventual combat between mermaids and humans. At some level, you know that's just going to happen. We cut back to Decker, who has made a discovery. He's gotten him by using some pure mermaid DNA, he's seeing the rejuvenative and health aspects of it. Essentially taking a mouse that's paralyzed and being able to make it walk again. So right there, you know that's the kind of thing military industrial complexes love to hear about. That does not bode well for the mermaid in the tank in the military industrial complex, though. That's the only thing. From there, we have a moment where Rin she's pissed, she's angry, she's tired, she doesn't know why these humans aren't helping her, why she isn't getting to her sister, and she ends up at a party. And this was where I give the show a lot of credit, because there are so many ways the show could have gone wrong. There are so many different cliches that they could have done. It could have been a disaster, it could have been fighting, it could have been everything else. And you know what? At the end of the day, it actually wasn't. And you know, when the party gets interrupted, as parties should, the police, and Rin getting kind of like shuffled out of there, I really enjoyed that because, again, because I get conditioned to lesser shows, it's one of those things where like, oh, she's going to a pool party with water, with what we've learned. But no, actually, it segued well. And again, if I could give any example of why I'm liking the show, it is that moment. Because it was one of those moments where, again, you could have gone 100 different ways that we've all known and probably would have been okay with because we're used to it. And you didn't. So again, Freeform, creative behind Siren, all of you, fantastic job on that. That was the one moment where I was like, but it wasn't. No, it really wasn't. I gave you a lot of credit. From there, we see, I think Admiral, I think it is Admiral Harrison, and Decker. We're seeing now, this is what I was telling you before. This is where we're going to see the common conflict that exists between science and between the military. Now, Decker's starting to develop a heart for the mermaid, which about damn time. I mean, it's really been doing experiments on the mermaid for a while. I think you should develop some kind of feeling. And of course, Harrison representing the typical military, which is like, I don't really care if you have to take a chainsaw to that mermaid and get every little ounce that you can, because we're going to get everything else we can out of that mermaid to help us build up these super soldiers, because it's always about building up super soldiers. So again, it's that conflict, while cliched, I would love to see a little nuance. I would like to see the military not just be the cliched bad guy. I'd like to see a little nuance to Decker also, because I do think there's some nuances. I do think he feels for the mermaid, but I also think it's one of these instances where it's like, oh my God, all of these biological innovations and medical innovations we can make off of this DNA. I'd like to see more of the more of a Westworld type of internal struggle in Decker. I don't think that's asking a lot. Something I mentioned earlier too, there's an interaction between Maddie and Rin where they're talking about the issue of trust. That I would just say go back and watch it. I'm pretty sure I posted it as the preview clip before the review, but if I didn't, check it out. It's a really great moment, and again, it's this idea of I don't want them to be conflict between those two, because female friendship and the sisterly bond between them, I think, would just be just a nice change of pace for the show moving forward. Again, I'm a big believer in keeping Ben and Maddie together, personally, just from my standpoint. Now, of course, we don't want to forget about Xander. We don't forget about Calvin. They find out that the phone that they got the call from person, Donna. Donna's a nurse. So they essentially follow Donna. Donna makes her way back to the industrial complex. But what a surprise. The military industrial complex, the shady gates, they don't just allow everybody in. So Xander and Calvin got turned away to nobody's surprise. That was a little odd moment, I gotta say. But later on, they do get a call from Donna. Dun, dun, dun. That's actually a couple of dun moments. The Xander, Calvin, that aspect of it, okay. I think if you have to pick an hour, there's like one instance where you're like, okay, I could have shaved a little bit off. It's a little bit there. So again, to be fair and to not just be a cheerleader for the show, I mean, I know you have to kind of move the story forward and start introducing it in play. But yeah, that just kind of left me a little bit. But that's okay, because the ending left us with two big cliffhangers. One of which I really appreciated. Military knows, Ben knows, which I'm love. Let's get this out of there right now. So Ben, you're on the military's radar. Never a good thing to be. So now we know Ben moving forward. Ben's essentially having to deal with family past stuff, military stuff with his partner and girlfriend, trying to figure out what the song in his head is and his connection to Rin, and an entire mermaid population that might be starting to make itself more prevalent in Bristol Cove. Not a lot for Ben to put up with, right? Yeah, that's just how episode 3 ends. And then we find out, what a shock, Mermaid in the tank, in the military industrial complex, faking it. No surprise, no shock, but still, there was just that moment of, you ended the episode Freeform by making me go, oh, okay, all right. Now we're going to start picking things up. And again, we're only going into the 4th episode. So that's what I appreciate. With Siren, I had 2 episodes that gave me a chance to get to know the characters, to get to know the mythology, and what's going to be in play. This episode started moving the pieces on the board, which I'm a big, big fan of.